When the power grid collapsed across Texas in February 2021, millions of Americans discovered something that historians and survivalists have known for centuries. Civilization is exactly 3 days deep. I'm Michael Williams, and over my 30 years studying economic collapse, wartime scarcity, and the fragile infrastructure that props up modern life, I've watched this pattern repeat with mathematical precision. In the first 72 hours after a major disruption, whether it's a hurricane slamming into the Gulf Coast or a cyber attack shutting down fuel pipelines, the comfortable assumptions of daily life evaporate like morning fog. The grocery stores that seemed bottomless become empty shells. The municipal water systems that delivered clean drinking water without thought sputter and fail. The digital payment networks that made cash obsolete simply stop working. And in that narrow window between normalcy and chaos, certain objects that cost less than a fast food meal suddenly become more valuable than the money in your wallet. This isn't speculation or prepper fantasy. This is documented reality, repeated across American history from the Great Depression breadlines to the hurricane-ravaged streets of New Orleans. From the COVID-19 panic buying of 2022, the blackouts that turned modern Texas into a third world country for a week. What I'm going to share with you today are 12 items, common household goods that most people overlook, that transform into survival essentials when the systems we depend on stop functioning. I need you to stay with me until the end of this video because the full picture of why these specific items matter and how they preserve not just life but dignity and hope only becomes clear when you understand the complete economic and psychological pattern of collapse. Comment below and tell me where you're watching from, your city and country, because this knowledge transcends borders even though we'll be focusing on the American experience. The 72-hour threshold isn't arbitrary. It comes from decades of disaster response research conducted by FEMA, the Red Cross, and military logistics experts who have studied everything from Hurricane Katrina in 2005 to the 1992 Los Angeles riots. What they discovered is that modern American society operates on what economists call just-in-time delivery systems. Your local supermarket doesn't have a warehouse out back filled with months of food. It has perhaps 3 days of inventory, sometimes less, constantly replenished by trucks that arrive on precise schedules. The same principle applies to gas stations, pharmacies, hardware stores, and every other retail outlet you depend on. When those trucks stop rolling, when the digital systems that coordinate this intricate dance of supply and demand go dark, the entire structure collapses with stunning speed. During Hurricane Katrina, which made landfall on August 29, 2005, the grocery stores in New Orleans were picked clean within 18 hours. Not 72 hours, 18. The people who waited, who assumed the government would arrive quickly with relief supplies, who believed that surely someone would take care of them, found themselves trapped in a city without food, clean water or basic sanitation for over a week. The Louisiana Superdome, which became a shelter for thousands, descended into conditions that shocked the nation because simple items like portable toilets, clean drinking water, and battery-powered lights were unavailable. This wasn't a third world country. This was the United States of America in the 21st century, and it fell apart in less time than a long weekend. The psychology of disaster follows predictable stages that researchers have mapped extensively. In the first hours after a crisis event, most people experience what sociologists call normalcy bias, the overwhelming tendency to believe that things will return to normal quickly because they always have before. This is why, when hurricane warnings are issued, a significant percentage of coastal residents don't evacuate. They've seen warnings before that didn't materialize into catastrophe, and their brains default to the comfortable assumption that this time will be no different. But for those who do prepare, who act in that narrow window before panic sets in, the difference between comfort and suffering, sometimes between life and death, comes down to having acquired specific items while they were still available and affordable. During the Texas blackout of 2021, which left over 4 million people without power in sub-freezing temperatures, the items that became instantly precious weren't luxury goods or high-tech solutions. They were simple things: propane canisters for camp stoves because electric stoves were useless, batteries for flashlights because candles were running out and fire risk was high, manual can openers because electric ones don't work without electricity and an astonishing number of American households had replaced their manual openers years ago, water purification tablets because the treatment plants lost power and boil water notices went out across the state. These aren't exotic survival tools. These are items you can buy at any Walmart or dollar store for a few dollars each. But when the crisis hit, they became priceless because you couldn't buy them at any price. The stores were closed, the roads were impassable, and the people who had them weren't selling. Let me take you back further into American history, because the pattern of collapse and the items that preserve life during it haven't changed as much as we'd like to believe. During the Great Depression, which officially began with the stock market crash of October 1929 but really accelerated into widespread privation by 1931, the American economic system underwent a transformation that shows us exactly what happens when money loses its meaning. At the height of the Depression in 1933, unemployment reached 25% nationally, but in some industrial cities like Toledo, Ohio, and Akron, it exceeded 40%. Banks failed by the thousands, taking people's life savings with them. And in that environment, the items that held value weren't stocks or bonds or even cash, which was often worthless if the bank holding it had collapsed. What mattered were physical goods that met basic human needs. Salt became a trading commodity because it preserved food in a world where refrigeration was expensive or unavailable. Soap, which seems trivial until you realize that disease spreads rapidly in populations that can't maintain basic hygiene, became precious. Matches, because starting a fire for cooking and heating without them is a genuine skill that most Americans had already lost by the 1930s. Sewing supplies, because buying new clothes was impossible for millions of families who had to patch and repair endlessly. These items, individually worth pennies, became the currency of survival because they were consumable, universally needed, and increasingly difficult to obtain as manufacturing and distribution systems contracted. The economic principle underlying this transformation is scarcity creating value. But it's not just simple supply and demand. It's about the collapse of complex systems revealing which goods are truly essential versus which ones only seemed important in times of abundance. During the COVID-19 pandemic, which began affecting American daily life in March 2020, we watched this process unfold in real time. Toilet paper became the subject of national obsession not because it's objectively more important than food or water, but because it represents a baseline of civilized dignity that Americans weren't psychologically prepared to lose. The photographs of empty store shelves, the videos of people fighting over packages of Charmin in grocery store aisles, the panic buying that stripped stores bare within days of the first lockdown. Announcements, all of this revealed how thin the margin is between normalcy and chaos. And it wasn't just toilet paper. Hand sanitizer, which had been a throwaway item you grabbed at the checkout counter, became so valuable that people were making it at home using rubbing alcohol and aloe vera gel, following recipes passed around on social media. Yeast for baking bread, because suddenly everyone was stuck at home and wanted to bake, vanished from stores for months. Canning supplies, mason jars and lids and pressure cookers, sold out as Americans rediscovered preservation techniques their grandparents had known. These weren't hoarders or preppers in most cases. These were ordinary people responding to a primal recognition that the systems they'd taken for granted were fragile, and that having physical goods on hand mattered more than having money in the bank when the stores were empty. What makes certain items become priceless in the first 72 hours specifically is a combination of immediate necessity, finite supply, and the rapid breakdown of distribution networks. Think about water. In normal circumstances, clean drinking water is so abundant in America that we use it to wash cars and water lawns. But when a hurricane knocks out power to water treatment plants, or when aging pipes contaminated with lead require boiling before consumption, or when a chemical spill upstream forces authorities to shut off municipal water supplies, suddenly every household needs gallons of clean water immediately. The human body requires roughly half a gallon to 3/4 of a gallon per day just for drinking, more in hot weather or if you're physically active. A family of 4 needs 3 gallons per day minimum, which means that in 72 hours they'll consume 9 gallons just for hydration, not counting cooking, washing, or sanitation. The stores that sell bottled water, assuming they're open and accessible, will be stripped bare within hours of an emergency declaration. This happened in Flint, Michigan, in 2016 when the water contamination crisis became public knowledge. It happened across Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria in 2017 when the entire island's water system collapsed and residents went weeks without reliable access to clean water. And it happened in Jackson, Mississippi in 2022 when flooding overwhelmed the city's failing water treatment system and 180,000 residents lost access to safe drinking water for weeks. The items that become priceless fall into categories that meet fundamental human needs: hydration, sanitation, nutrition, warmth, light, and the ability to maintain health and security. But there's another category that historians and economists sometimes overlook, which is the psychological need for normalcy and dignity. During the Siege of Sarajevo, which lasted from 1992 to 1996, making it the longest siege of a capital city in modern warfare, residents of what had been a cosmopolitan European city found themselves living in conditions that would have been familiar to medieval peasants. No electricity, no running water, no functioning stores or services. And in that environment, researchers who studied the aftermath found that certain small comfort items took on disproportionate value. Coffee, which has no survival value whatsoever, became extraordinarily precious because it represented a morning ritual, a moment of normalcy in an insane situation. Cigarettes became a form of currency even among non-smokers because they were compact, standardized, and desired by enough people to serve as a medium of exchange. Lighters and matches were hoarded not just for starting fires, but because they enabled that coffee and those cigarettes, and because fire is so fundamentally important to human psychology that controlling it provides a sense of agency in situations where you've lost control of almost everything else. I've spent considerable time studying the economic patterns of collapse. And one aspect that consistently surprises people is how quickly currency becomes problematic. We think of money as the solution to scarcity. If you have enough dollars, you can buy whatever you need. But in the first 72 hours of a genuine crisis, money often becomes nearly useless. During Hurricane Katrina, the electronic payment systems went down across the affected region. Credit cards and debit cards, which had become the primary payment method for most Americans, simply didn't work because the networks were offline. ATMs were dark and empty. And even if you had cash, many stores were closed, and the ones that remained open were either sold out of critical items or had owners who recognized that the money might not be worth much if the crisis extended. This is when barter emerges, not as a quaint historical curiosity but as a practical necessity. You trade goods for goods, services for goods, and the items that everyone needs become the most valuable trading commodities. During the Great Depression, skilled tradesmen would work for food rather than cash because food was immediately useful while cash might or might not buy anything tomorrow. During the collapse of the Soviet Union in the early 1990s, Russian citizens saw their savings evaporate as inflation destroyed the ruble, and the real economy operated on barter and exchange of physical goods. American expatriates living in Moscow during that period reported that items like soap, cigarettes, chocolate, and canned meat from Western countries were far more valuable than Russian currency. The 12 items I'm going to detail for you aren't chosen randomly. They're based on historical analysis of what actually proved valuable during American crises ranging from the Civil War through the Great Depression, World War II rationing, the Cold War civil defense planning, and contemporary disasters like Katrina, Sandy, Harvey, and the COVID pandemic. They're also informed by international examples of collapse, because human needs don't change based on geography. What people needed in besieged Sarajevo, in earthquake-shattered Haiti, in hurricane-devastated Puerto Rico, or in war-torn Syria provides clear evidence of what matters when civilization's veneer cracks. These items share common characteristics. They're inexpensive in normal times, often just a few dollars or less per unit. They're consumable or useful, meeting real needs rather than speculative value. They're compact enough to store without requiring warehouse space. They have long shelf lives if stored properly, meaning you can buy them now and they'll still be fully functional years later when you need them. And critically, they're items that most people don't think about until it's too late, which means demand will massively outstrip supply in the first hours of a crisis. Consider the humble disposable lighter. You can buy a Bic lighter at any gas station or convenience store for less than $2. Most people have one somewhere in their house, left over from lighting birthday candles or starting a backyard grill. But fire-making capability is one of the most fundamental survival needs humans have, and it's a skill that modern Americans have almost completely outsourced to technology. If you need to boil water to purify it, you need fire. If you need to cook food because your electric or gas stove isn't working, you need fire. If you need heat because your furnace is offline and temperatures are dropping into dangerous ranges, you need fire. And while there are primitive methods for starting fires, friction-based methods like bow drills, or spark-based methods using flint and steels, these require both knowledge and practice that most Americans simply don't have. During the Texas blackout, people who had fireplaces but no way to light them safely resorted to dangerous Some tried burning furniture and doors using makeshift methods, leading to house fires and carbon monoxide poisoning that killed several people. Others used charcoal grills and doors, which produced deadly carbon monoxide. A simple stockpile of disposable lighters, costing perhaps $20 for a dozen of them, would have prevented those deaths by providing a safe, reliable method for starting controlled fires in appropriate locations like fireplaces, outdoor fire pits, or camping stoves. The second item that transforms from mundane to critical is bleach, specifically unscented household chlorine bleach at a concentration of 5 to 8% sodium hypochlorite. In normal times, a gallon jug costs about $4 at any grocery store, and most households keep one under the kitchen sink for cleaning and laundry. But bleach serves a survival function that few Americans think about until water treatment systems fail. It can purify drinking water when used correctly. The Environmental Protection Agency and the Centers for Disease Control both recommend bleach as an emergency water disinfection method, with the standard ratio being 8 drops of unscented bleach per gallon of clear water, 16 drops if the water is cloudy, then letting it stand for 30 minutes before drinking. During Hurricane Maria, which devastated Puerto Rico in September 2017, the island's water infrastructure collapsed so completely that residents went months without reliable access to treated water. The Federal Emergency Management Agency distributed information about bleach water treatment, but the people who had stocked bleach beforehand, who had it sitting in their homes when the storm hit, were weeks ahead of those who had to wait for outside help. Beyond water purification, bleach serves critical sanitation functions during infrastructure collapse, when sewage systems back up or fail entirely, when toilets can't flush and waste begins accumulating. Diluted bleach solution becomes the primary weapon against disease-causing bacteria. During the siege of Sarajevo, researchers documented that infectious disease outbreaks were contained primarily through rigorous sanitation practices using whatever disinfectants people could obtain. The same pattern held true in Haiti after the 2010 earthquake, when cholera outbreaks killed thousands of people because sanitation infrastructure had collapsed and clean water was unavailable. A gallon of bleach, properly rationed and used for disinfection rather than cleaning, can purify over 1,000 gallons of drinking water or sanitize living spaces for weeks. Yet in the panic buying that accompanies disaster warnings, bleach often sells out within the first 24 hours because the people who understand its value act immediately. Salt represents another substance that seems too commonplace to warrant attention until you understand its historical significance and practical applications. Table salt costs less than $1 per pound in normal times, and Americans consume it so thoughtlessly that we've developed national health concerns about excessive sodium intake. But salt is a chemical necessity for human survival, required for nerve function and fluid balance. And it's also the oldest and most reliable food preservation method known to civilization. Before refrigeration, which only became common in American households after World War II, salt was how meat and fish were preserved through seasons when fresh food was unavailable. During the American Civil War, the Union blockade of southern ports made salt desperately scarce in the Confederacy because the South had limited salt production capacity and had relied on imports. The price of salt in the Confederacy increased by over 4,000% between 1861 and 1865. And Confederate forces actually fought battles specifically to control salt works in places like Saltville, Virginia. Women rioted in southern cities, not primarily over food shortages but over salt shortages, because without salt they couldn't preserve the food they did have. In modern collapse scenarios, when power grids fail and refrigeration becomes impossible, salt immediately regains its historical importance. The meat in your freezer will begin thawing within hours of power loss, and unless you can preserve it through salting or smoking, it will rot and become not just useless but dangerous. During the Texas blackout, people who lost power for days watched hundreds of dollars worth of frozen food spoil completely, and that was in winter temperatures. In summer heat, the timeline compresses to hours. Salt also serves medical purposes, with saline solution being critical for wound cleaning, and it can be used to create electrolyte replacement drinks for treating dehydration. A 20-pound bag of salt, costing perhaps $10, provides food preservation capability and medical utility that becomes genuinely priceless when refrigeration fails. Garbage bags, particularly heavy-duty contractor bags, represent an item so unglamorous that most people would never consider stockpiling them, yet they become critically important within hours of infrastructure failure. A box of 50 contractor-grade garbage bags costs about $15, and each bag serves dozens of potential survival functions beyond containing trash. When sanitation systems fail and toilets can't flush, garbage bags lined with absorbent material become emergency toilets, a system that disaster preparedness experts call bucket toilets, and that has been used in everything from hurricane evacuations to siege situations. During Hurricane Katrina, when the Superdome shelters had no functioning bathrooms, the lack of sanitation led to conditions so horrific that health officials worried about disease outbreaks. Garbage bags also serve as emergency rainwater collection systems, as waterproofing for supplies and documents, as emergency ponchos or ground covers, and as containment for contaminated materials. In cold weather situations like the Texas blackout, people used garbage bags as insulation layers, stuffing them with newspaper or leaves and wearing them under clothing or using them to seal windows and doors against drafts. The versatility of plastic sheeting in survival situations has been documented extensively in military field manuals and disaster response protocols. During the Bosnian War, survivors reported using plastic bags and sheeting for everything from makeshift windows after glass was blown out, to containers for carrying water, to waterproofing for firewood storage. The U.S. military includes heavy-duty plastic bags in survival kits specifically because they're lightweight, compact, and serve so many functions that soldiers can adapt them to whatever situation arises. If this information is helping you understand how to protect your family and prepare intelligently for disruptions, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the remaining items on this list. Activate the notification bell so you're alerted when we release detailed guides on each of these survival essentials, and comment below telling me where you're watching from, your city and country, because I want to know how widespread this knowledge is reaching and what concerns people have in different regions. Manual can openers belong on this list because they represent a category of preparedness that Americans have almost entirely forgotten, having non-electric alternatives for basic tasks. In homes where electric can openers have completely replaced manual ones, and in kitchens where young adults have grown up never learning to use a traditional hand-cranked can opener, canned food becomes inaccessible when power fails. This isn't theoretical. During the Texas blackout, Social media filled with posts from people who had pantries full of canned goods but no way to open them because their only can opener was electric. Some resorted to using knives, hammers, or other dangerous improvised methods that resulted in injuries and wasted food. A good manual can opener costs less than $10 and lasts for years, yet it's the difference between accessing your food storage or watching it sit uselessly on shelves. This principle extends to all the battery-powered or electric conveniences that Americans depend on. You need manual backups. During World War II rationing, when canned goods were precious commodities requiring ration stamps, every American household had reliable manual can openers because that generation understood self-sufficiency. The Great Depression generation, which my own grandparents belonged to, kept manual tools for everything specifically because they'd lived through infrastructure failures and economic collapse. They had manual egg beaters, manual coffee grinders, manual food mills, and they knew how to use them because electricity wasn't reliable in rural America until the Rural Electrification Act of the 1930s brought power to farming communities. That knowledge has been lost in just 2 generations as Americans have outsourced basic tasks to electric appliances, and the vulnerability this creates becomes obvious the moment power fails for more than a few hours. Water purification tablets offer another layer of security beyond bleach, specifically because they're portable, have long shelf lives, and work reliably without requiring measurement or waiting periods beyond 30 minutes. A bottle of 50 water purification tablets costs about $12 and can treat 25 gallons of water, making them extraordinarily cost-effective for emergency preparedness. The tablets typically use either iodine or chlorine dioxide as the active disinfectant, and they're standard equipment in military field kits precisely because soldiers need reliable water treatment, methods that don't depend on having access to bleach bottles or the ability to boil water. During the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, American troops used water purification tablets extensively when operating in areas where the water infrastructure was damaged or contaminated. The same technology that keeps soldiers safe in combat zones works equally well for American civilians when municipal water systems fail. In Flint, Michigan, when the lead contamination crisis made tap water dangerous, residents who had water filters and purification tablets were protected while others had to rely on bottled water distribution that was sporadic and insufficient. During natural disasters, when water treatment plants lose power or flooding contaminates water supplies, purification tablets provide immediate protection against waterborne diseases like cholera, dysentery, and These diseases, which seem like historical problems in modern America, resurface with stunning speed when clean water becomes unavailable. After Hurricane Katrina, cases of waterborne illness spiked significantly in the affected regions, and public health officials had to conduct emergency education campaigns about water safety, because people were drinking contaminated water out of desperation. Batteries represent stored energy in its most practical form for short-term emergencies, and having a substantial stockpile of the right types can mean the difference between having light, communication, and information versus sitting in darkness with no connection to the outside world. AA and AAA batteries are the most versatile because they power flashlights, radios, headlamps, and many emergency devices, and they're relatively inexpensive when purchased in bulk at warehouse stores. A pack of 48 AA batteries costs about $25 and will power a small LED flashlight for hundreds of hours of intermittent use. During the COVID-19 lockdowns, when people suddenly found themselves at home constantly and dependent on battery-powered devices for everything from remote controls to children's toys, batteries became unexpectedly scarce in stores. During power outages, batteries become even more critical because they enable the flashlights and radios that provide safety and information. The Texas blackout demonstrated this clearly when people who had battery-powered lights could navigate their homes safely at night while others resorted to candles, which caused numerous house fires. Battery-powered radios, which seem almost quaintly old-fashioned in an era of smartphones and streaming media, become primary information sources when cell towers lose power and internet connections fail. NOAA weather radios, which run on AA batteries and can receive emergency broadcasts even when all other communication systems are down, are recommended by every disaster preparedness organization specifically because they're independent of grid power and internet connectivity. During Hurricane Sandy in 2012, which knocked out power to millions of people across the Northeast for up to 2 weeks, battery-powered radios were how many people received critical information about evacuation orders, shelter locations, and when power might be restored. Duct tape has achieved almost mythical status in survivalist circles because of its extraordinary versatility, but the reality matches the reputation. A roll of quality duct tape costs about $8 and can perform dozens of critical functions in emergency situations, from patching torn clothing and damaged gear to creating makeshift repairs on anything from windows to water containers. NASA includes duct tape on space missions because astronauts have used it for everything from repairing equipment to patching damaged spacesuits. During the Apollo 13 mission in 1970, when an oxygen tank explosion crippled the spacecraft and threatened the crew's survival, engineers on the ground devised a carbon dioxide scrubber repair using duct tape as a critical component, and that improvised fix helped save the astronauts' lives. Military forces worldwide include duct tape in field kits because soldiers in combat zones have documented thousands of uses for it, from repairing torn tents and damaged boots to creating emergency bandages and splints. In survival situations, duct tape can waterproof containers, seal drafts around windows and doors, repair torn tops and plastic sheeting, create emergency rope by twisting it, patch holes in water containers, and even serve medical functions like securing bandages or creating butterfly closures for wounds. During the Sarajevo siege, survivors reported that duct tape and plastic sheeting were among the most valuable items for maintaining shelter integrity when windows were blown out by shelling and building damage was constant. The ability to make repairs using simple materials extends the functionality of everything else you own during crisis situations when replacement items are unavailable. Feminine hygiene products deserve mention on this list because they address a need that affects half the population but often gets overlooked in preparedness planning dominated by male perspectives. During Hurricane Katrina, relief organizations discovered that feminine hygiene products were critically needed in shelters but had been largely overlooked in initial supply distributions. Women were forced to use improvised methods or go without, creating not just discomfort but genuine health risks. Packages of tampons or pads cost between $7 and $12 depending on quantity and brand, and having a 3-month supply on hand costs less than $50 but eliminates a significant source of distress during emergencies. Beyond their primary use, these products also serve survival functions that make them valuable even for households without women of childbearing age. They're highly absorbent, making them useful for wound care and bandaging. They're sterile when individually wrapped, which matters for medical applications, and they can be broken down and used as fire-starting tinder because the cotton or synthetic fibers catch sparks easily and burn steadily. Military medics have used tampons for wound packing in combat situations when standard medical supplies were exhausted, a practice that's controversial among medical professionals but has been documented in field conditions where improvisation is necessary. Soap, both bar soap and liquid soap, becomes unexpectedly precious when supply chains break down because hygiene is the primary defense against disease in situations where medical care is limited or unavailable. A case of bar soap with 24 bars costs about $12 at warehouse stores, and liquid hand soap in bulk quantities costs slightly more but offers convenience advantages. During the COVID-19 pandemic, soap and hand sanitizer both became scarce items as panic buying stripped stores bare, and the Centers for Disease Control emphasized that simple hand washing with ordinary soap was more effective than many complex antibacterial products for preventing disease transmission. This wasn't new information. Florence Nightingale revolutionized military medicine during the Crimean War in the 1850s, primarily by insisting on cleanliness and hand washing, which reduced death rates from infection dramatically. During World War I, trench warfare created horrific sanitation conditions, and soldiers who maintained hygiene routines despite the difficulties had substantially lower rates of disease and infection than those who didn't. In modern disaster situations, when infrastructure collapses and people are living in stressed conditions with limited access to clean water, maintaining hygiene through soap use becomes critically important for preventing disease outbreaks. After the Haiti earthquake in 2010, cholera outbreaks killed thousands of people, and public health officials identified inadequate sanitation and hygiene as primary factors. Simple interventions like soap distribution and hygiene education proved more effective at controlling disease spread than many more complex medical interventions. Plastic sheeting and tarps provide shelter repair capability and waterproofing functions that become immediately critical when homes are damaged or when you need to create emergency shelter spaces. A heavy-duty tarp costs between $20 and $50 depending on size, and plastic sheeting sold in rolls at hardware stores costs about $30 for a roll that's 10 feet by 25 feet. When hurricanes damage roofs, which happens extensively during major storms, the immediate need is to prevent water intrusion that will cause exponentially more damage to home interiors. After Hurricane Harvey hit Houston in 2017, the demand for tarps and plastic sheeting was so intense that supplies sold out regionally and had to be shipped in from other parts of the country. Homeowners who had tarps stored before the storm could protect their homes immediately, while those who didn't often waited weeks for relief supplies or contractor availability, during which time water damage progressed from repairable to catastrophic. Beyond roof repairs, tarps and plastic sheeting create emergency shelter spaces, protect supplies from weather, collect rainwater, and serve as ground covers that prevent moisture infiltration from below. During the Dust Bowl of the 1930s, when drought and poor farming practices turned the Great Plains into a wasteland and displaced hundreds of thousands of Americans, migrant families lived in tarp-covered camps and makeshift shelters where plastic sheeting and canvas tarps were the primary weather protection. What ties all 12 of these items together is that they're force multipliers for survival and resilience. Items whose value vastly exceeds their cost when infrastructure fails and normal supply channels disappear. They represent the kind of practical wisdom that built America, the frontier self-reliance that turned wilderness into civilization, the Depression-era resourcefulness that carried families through economic catastrophe, and the wartime adaptability that won global conflicts. This isn't about paranoia or extremism. This is about recognizing that the complex systems we depend on are fragile, that disruptions happen with statistical regularity throughout American history, and that being prepared is an act of responsibility to your family and community. The 72-hour window is real, documented across dozens of disaster scenarios, and the people who fare best are those who acted before crisis forced their hand. Each of these 12 items costs less than a dinner out, and together they represent maybe $300 of investment that could prove genuinely priceless when the comfortable assumptions of daily life evaporate. Store them properly, rotate stock to maintain freshness where relevant, and know how to use them, because knowledge without preparation is just theory, while preparation without knowledge is just accumulation. The American tradition of self-reliance isn't about isolating yourself from community. It's about being strong enough to help others when systems fail and institutions prove inadequate to the crisis at hand.